What's up everyone, it's your homeboy, and before I start the video, I want to give you guys a little bit of context. So recently, Hansen did an interview with Jeffree regarding Davi Vanity.
And welcome to a special edition of Have a Seat with Hansen for what will be, no doubt, one of the most analyzed, scrutinized, and perhaps criticized interviews that you'll see this year.
Damn, Chrissy Poo, you was really setting the expectations high from the jump, huh? So on that day that Chris interviewed Jeffree, I decided I want to do a live stream and just vent my thoughts, and I invited Ashley Lilly, who is one of Davi survivors, onto my stream so she could also give her thoughts about the live stream. However, I could not have predicted that other YouTubers were gonna join my stream and all of a sudden we're gonna become a squad and all express ourselves, but hey, it was cute. If you're subscribed to the channel via notifications, you might notice that every now and then I'll do live streams, sometimes unplanned, sometimes unplanned. But I never keep them on my channel. I do re-upload it to my Patreon, but I just don't want to have long live streams on my channel, because those are supposed to be moments for me to connect with my audience. Now, every now and then I will edit them down and post like highlights onto this channel. If you missed it, then you could either sign into the Patreon or hopefully I'll do highlights like this. So I just want to clear that up because every now and then I'll get comments from people saying, "Hey Edwin, why did you take it down?" I'm like, what do you mean? I never keep it up. So with that out of the way, I will have timestamps in the pinned comment down below for every person or topic that we discuss in this video because it turned out to be quite long and it took me a little bit to edit. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the Comedy Central roast of the Hansen and Jeffree interview. So everybody, welcome to the show. Let me just introduce everybody. We've just heard Ashley share her experience, well, to some detail, right? Just summarize her experience. I thought that was important to do before we fully discuss the interview that was Jeffree and Hansen. Now, also in the call we have TehMimi and Shannon Creepshow, which are two YouTubers that have also been covering this story pretty extensively. Obviously YouTubers, but if you guys want to further introduce yourselves, go ahead, Shannon, and then Mimi.
I'm just a idiot who makes videos about what I think is like wrong and right in the community, I guess, because I view things, and if I see something wrong or if I see something positive, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to try to give a voice to the people who I think deserve it.
Okay.
To piggyback on Shannon, pretty much exactly the same. I am basically Avril Lavigne's Wario. I'm very pissed off all the time. And every time I'm starting to become very frustrated seeing a lot of bias in what would be considered drama channels cover, and I think it's time to make a change in the community to try to say what is actually wrong opposed to what we want to cherry pick on what's wrong and what's right to look good in the community, if that makes any sense.
I should probably introduce myself because I'm sure people don't know who I am, or even if people who know I am. This is my side channel. I have another channel called Edwin's Generation. In this channel, I like to be more lax. Maybe I should have put this on my main channel, but I guess I chose not to because I don't have a current plan to cover it. But I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to it. I applaud you ladies for doing such a wonderful job so far. My two main themes that I like to do on Edwin's Generation are like accountability and nuance, right? Because sure, we can point the finger and be like, that's a bad guy, but also sometimes there's like little critical thinking we must use to kind of point the difference. And I feel like if you're accusing someone of something, they should have a voice, right? Which is what we witnessed today with Jeffree. He defended himself against quite a few accusations. I don't think all of them, and that's what we're gonna be going over. And even the ones that he defended himself, I feel like that's the important part. Like, I feel it's weird when people don't want people to defend themselves, because when they do, it gives you an opportunity to put a question mark on what they're saying and really break it down. And
I think that's like, just to piggyback off that, I think it's really important to get someone else's side, because it's like you can't argue with someone based off, you did this, therefore you're bad, because it's like there's a million reasons why someone will do something. And I think my biggest thing is I wanted certain questions answered. I could know why X, Y, and Z happened. I wanted to know, like, I had certain questions that I like posited on Twitter and to Chris that you already know about. I was like, I would like these answered because it was important to me to know his reasoning why. And the fact that at the end of the day, we still don't know because those questions were over in terms of like, oh, we're just going to ask these really simple ones.
Well, every question he responded with like a way of like just completely directing it somewhere else. Like there was no actual answer that he gave.
So much of that. So much like redirection. I was like, what's going on here?
I've never been so angry.
I was sitting there and like at the first couple of minutes where Chris was just like, a lot of people have been telling me what they want me to say, but I'm not going to say it. And I was like, okay, so he's going to say like better questions.
And I've had suggestions and people tell me how to conduct this interview. And my philosophy on conducting interviews is to be a good listener. So that is exactly what I'm going to do with you today.
And then every question he said, Jeffree was just like, that's a wonderful question, but also look over there. There's a seagull. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So we're not doing this.
Lots of misdirection and blame shifting going on there.
Kind of no matter what, Jeffree showed his ass, because something that I kind of caught on to the Chris doing was he was asking the same question but in different ways, and Jeffree would respond in different ways each time. So he already showed his ass and showed that he's not telling a consistent story. I think Chris would have done a lot better, but no matter what, at the end of the day, Jeffree is like that. If he wasn't as big as he would have demolished his career with that.
One thing that I found very concerning was the first couple sentences that Chris was saying in the beginning. I have like some mixed feelings about the whole way that it was handled. I think that he was definitely trying to help Jeffree look as good as possible.
So, and people want to say because you were on stage when Davi Vanity did this, that somehow you should have reported that and gone to the police and said Davi Vanity is a predator targeting underage girls.
Right. Jeffree would say that he didn't see anything like enough. Like he would say he saw inappropriate behavior, but not enough. Right. It was like not sufficient. So he just kept.
What's enough? They're children.
That's what I would like to elaborate on. That's what I would like to kind of ask Jeffree. Yes, because they're children. I want to give a shout out to Paige in the chat because she received a DM from Jeffree. To my understanding, without even contacting Jeffree, Jeffree contacted Paige. I feel like I have to say that whole thing. Paige, and he was just like, interesting how everyone can make these judgments about me without even bothering to hit me up. But to my understanding,
asked him.
There's been, I think, like 4 people I can think of off the top of my head that asked him for a comment before he publicly said that.
Right,
not
that's
even
what
just that. Not even just like, those are the people who handled it privately. I've been tweeting at him for a while publicly being like, what was the reason, essentially just screaming on Twitter.
And he sees it.
Not only does he see it, because he's referenced my videos not only by name, but he's also referenced my tweets. And he's like kind of like low-key talked about lawyers about them. Then what's weirder is that he'll say that and then he won't like message me or like talk to me back, but he has everyone else blocked but me.
It's because he's the victim. Because he's the victim. Everybody's canceling him, and poor him and his $17 million mansion.
Edwin, I just want to let you know Keem wants to be in this stream.
I'm definitely curious about his perspective before I put him on the stream, because I know the homeboy likes to talk. I'm gonna let you guys. I'm gonna let you ladies speak first, and I'm gonna keep talking to chat. I'm gonna go pee, and then I'll add him because that way I can ask some questions first. But go ahead. I need to recharge a little bit, and I'll be right back.
So as somebody who I posted this on Twitter, but I mean, not to be self-deprecating, but who am I compared to you guys' voices on Twitter? But I posted something on Twitter a little bit ago. I have never really been so angry as somebody who is a survivor of Davi. Jeffree Star is not my ally. Whenever he was towards the end of the video and he got the fake voice on, I'm so sorry to anybody who's dealt with him. You're not sorry because you don't care. And I'm getting choked up talking about it, so excuse me, but he didn't. If he actually cared, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. It's just he's not my ally. He doesn't care about the victims. He doesn't at all. And it's just, that is so obvious in the way that he misdirected every question. If he genuinely cared, he would have came on with, an open heart, and he would have came on and, worded things differently. I don't know how to explain it, but all I can say is he is beautifully. Not. Oh, thank you.
I agree.
But he's not my ally. He's not my protector. He's not somebody that gives a shit about me. He gives a shit about talking politely to viewers to seem appealing. Just the day after all this came out, he started donating $50,000 to people.
Hey, you're a badass. Did you know that? Are you aware right now that you're a badass?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
First things first, you started with who's my voice compared to you guys. never say that ever again, because you have the loudest voice out of all of us, and your voice matters the most. You do have a voice, because without you, me, TehMimi, Edwin, Keemstar, like, nobody could say anything, because people like you are coming forward, and that takes so much strength, dude. Like, you have my respect, you have respect of everyone in this fucking chat, and if you don't have their respect, then I'm gonna drop kick them. Like, that's stupid. You're a badass, first and foremost. Second off,
Thank you so much.
just saying Jeffree doesn't speak to you says a lot, because it's like, he is a PR guy. That's what he does. That's what he likes to do. He's like, I know exactly what I'm going to say in order to get people to think X, Y, and Z of me. He's on here, like, I never witnessed anything that was that illegal. I saw Davi hold a minor by the neck and grind on them, but that wasn't that bad. Like, he's doing that, and in
It's
doing
so
that,
gross.
it's meaning what some of the people have gone through, because he's just like, well, that wasn't that bad for me. It's just like,
Yeah, because
no.
you're not a 12-year-old girl.
Exactly.
Like, who are you to speak on behalf of the victims and what's too bad for them? Like, you can't relate.
Hey, what's up? No, I just wanted to come in real quick and just ask everyone here and everyone that's following this story to not put pressure on me to find Jeffree Star guilty, because that is nearly impossible, okay? Because first of all, we don't know if Jeffree Star is guilty, but second of all, you've seen him in that interview. Jeffree Star is better at talking and whatever than almost any YouTuber on the planet. Like, I mean, he had Chris Hansen on there. Did Chris Hansen get him the pedo catcher? No, not even close. So I don't want that pressure.
Not only that,
Well,
but
okay, listen. What Jeffree told me in private is very similar to what he told Chris Hansen today, right? He said that he was told that Darby, right, was doing this creepy stuff with underage girls. He believed it. I think he might have said, and don't quote me on this because I might be wrong, but I think he might have said he's seen an underage girl go into the hotel room, right? He called him out on Twitter, said, yo, this guy's a pedophile. But then there was like a manager of Warped Tour that convinced Jeffree that he was wrong, that this wasn't true. And then Darby himself manipulated Jeffree and said that this wasn't true. So he felt comfortable again, thinking that he might have been wrong to go on tour with them and to somehow have a relationship with them again. I'm sorry, but that's kind of a good explanation. It really is.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, what most people have an issue with, and we can like agree on to disagree on this with Keemstar, but my issue that if someone says, I witnessed X, Y, and Z, I witnessed a crime, what I'm not going to do is be like, oh, it's cool to lie about witnessing a crime because you just wanted the clout, you just wanted the attention because you witnessed him go into a hotel room, then you said, I saw him a child. He said 100% he's a child in the tweets. That's my thing, is that if someone falsely reports a crime, I have an issue with that, and I have a huge issue with that just as a person. And that's my own thing. Could have been manipulated after the fact into thinking, oh, he didn't actually do this, it's not that bad. However, even the lying the lying to me is just like, that's over a line. And people are in the chat saying hashtag justice for James Charles. That's another point. It's like, why is this a constant in this person's life where they're lying about someone being a predator? This is
Like, he just lied about that less than a year ago or a year ago. He did the same thing to James Charles, and now they're best friends again on Twitter. Like, that just makes you lose all credibility in anything you say.
not only that,
I'm sorry,
but
I haven't been to a Blood on the Dance Floor concert in a while. How do you say the guy's name?
Davi.
Davi.
One thing to actually answer your question though, Keem, is one example of this actually that has happened in this specific case is the fact that people have interviewed Jessie Slaughter, now known as Damien, and she said that they said that they witnessed Jeffree witnessing Davi doing this. And at that point, who do we believe now? Because Jeffree has gone back on his word. He said in his tweet that he saw 100% illegal things happening, and now he's saying he didn't witness anything. But now we also have a potential witness to a witness saying that he did see it happen. And in this particular situation, it wasn't even brought up in the Chris Hansen interview. In fact, I can't recall if they even mentioned Damien at all, and if they did, it was very seldomly. That situation wasn't brought up.
It was very brief.
They didn't, which I think is weird.
The biggest problem with all this is that this happened so long ago. Like,
that doesn't matter.
Okay, well, this is
kind
of a side question.
It does matter in the sense of like trying to do a investigation and get all the facts. Like,
but people are reporting it now, and people are making police reports, and I'm helping these young 16-year-old girls now that file police reports against him currently. A girl just sent me a picture of him kissing her on the mouth 10 years ago, and she was only 13. That is still evidence that can be sent in, and if so many police reports are made, then it doesn't matter how long ago it was, because they have record of all these allegations and all of this that he's supposedly done.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm just saying that it's hard. I mean, obviously, if something is fresh and new, it's much easier to do the research and get all the facts than something that's like 10 years old. That was my only point.
Okay, so Keem, I want to ask you a question, and it's kind of like a side topic, but I'm actually, so you're still doing an interview with Jeffree, right? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, because my assumption was actually that maybe Chris Hansen hijacked it, but I'm actually surprised because I thought that maybe he canceled on you. But what I was telling people was that I was like, I'm pretty sure that Chris Hansen scheduled his on Sunday so early because he usually does this on Wednesdays to get the exclusive, and he literally, after I said that, he labeled his exclusive interview with Jeffree Star.
Of course he did.
So you think that as well?
Like Jeffree also
100%.
posted on Twitter. He also
Jeffree
posted
was
on
the first
Twitter like
one.
it's gonna be legendary, and I needed even in the interview he was just like, I had to bring it to Chris first because he's the only person to do this. I was like, bitch, you brought it to Keemstar first. Then people criticized you for bringing it to Keemstar, and then you did it. Like, okay.
Right, because
I mean, at the end of the day, look, Chris Hansen, he has a lot of legal problems. He needs some money. Like, geez, let's help this boomer out. He's got some bills to pay. You know what I'm saying? No, but I actually reached out to Jeffree because I'm one of the few people that he follows on Twitter, and I was trying to help some of these small channels out because I seen a bunch of you guys doing this story. Quite frankly, I'm going to be so honest, and I know like there's a potential victim here, and I apologize if this comes across as rude, but I'm just not interested in the story. Like, I'm not in this.
That's fair.
I'm not in this scene at all. You know what I mean? Like, drama is kind of like pop culture, and this is kind of like the Onision thing again, which like that thing just got so big that I was like, okay, I need to get involved. But I wanted to help out one of the smaller channels. Can I just say, or does it matter?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to help out Creepshow because I seen she was making a bunch of videos on this, and I was like, listen, I can reach out to Jeffree for you and try to get a statement for you for your video. So I reached out to Jeffree and I explained, the tweets or whatever to him, and he's like, I don't even know what this is about. And then he gave me his explanation, and then he said, hey, I think I should just go on drama. I'm like, I really don't, like, I'm not into this story. I don't know anything about it. And then, we started talking about the podcast, and he agreed to come on the podcast. I hit up Creepshow in the DMs and was like, this is what he said, and he's coming on the podcast. So, yeah, I mean, I want to make sure that you guys aren't thinking that when I have Jeffree Star on Mom's Basement podcast on Spotify, that I'm going to catch him and all this, because I quite frankly don't know anything about this. Like, I know little bits and pieces, and I will ask him about the tweets. He's going to give me the same answer, and that's going to be that.
Okay, I have a...
I think at the most part, you shouldn't market it as like what Chris did, which I find to be really fucking gross, which I think a lot of what Chris does is really gross because he's terrible at his job. Just don't market it as a hard-hitting interview where you're going to answer all these questions, because at the end of the day, that's not what it's going to be, and you're going to bring stuff up, of course, but you're not planning to do that.
Ultimately, what you guys want to do is find Jeffree guilty and then cancel him for aiding and abetting and this whole thing with...
That's not what I want at all.
I just want an explanation.
Well,
I want to know why.
I want to
know why he did that, Keemstar. I just want to know his explanation, because it doesn't make sense to be like, like, here's how I see it. If I did something up, Keem, and you reported it, and instead of telling you why I did it, you, like, I just made up excuses after excuses that were obviously not true, and more people would want to know why. And that's the issue, is I just want an explanation, certain questions that I have about why he acted in a certain way, including what he did today, because that was very blatant manipulation. Like, he answered the questions.
Ultimately, Jeffree Star has to say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this, or I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, because obviously a mistake was made. But Jeffree Star is not going to say that, you know, so I don't know what you guys want.
Well, okay, also, just to my understanding, Keem, you're having him on 2 shows, right? You on the Dramaler and on your podcast?
No. I'm not covering the story on Dramaler. I'm not saying that I'll never cover it on Dramaler. It just becomes like something.
Okay.
And it's a part of pop culture, then I will obviously.
Okay, so we have to tune into the podcast on Spotify to hear that much. Right?
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm not even trying to plug my Spotify in Mom's Basement, because honestly, you're probably not going to get the podcast you want. I'm not trying to plug it, but it is available on Spotify.
Okay,
and
well,
it is called Mom's Basement. Keemstar, Face, thanks.
I don't want to interrupt you guys, but I'm actually going to get off because I'm going to go check on Damie. But I just wanted to thank everybody again for letting me talk and like hanging out and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ashley. Everybody in the chat, and shout out to Ashley.
I do want to say that I think even if Creepshow had an interview with Jeffree or any of you guys that are really working this story, I think you'd struggle with the same difficulties that like anyone would when you're talking to him. Jeffree's really good at talking, really good at explaining himself.
Sure.
And you know, I just I think the whole concept of we're gonna catch him and we're gonna get him is like a very low percentage. Like I just think that's like
I agree. You know, it's like you were saying earlier, easy, similar to the Onision thing. I don't think that's an easy one-on-one. You know, I think that that's why I think the mediator could really help in that department.
It's like you can't make someone when you're talking to them say what you want to say, and so like when I'm interviewing Onision, I've seen this whole group right get so upset. You had him. This was your chance. You like. Dude, the guy is going to say what he wants to say. You know what I mean? The guy is going to put up the defense he wants to defend. You know, it's not the interviewer's fault, right? And the same thing with Chris Hansen. I mean, Chris Hansen did ask the questions, and Jeffree went somewhere else with it, right? Is it Chris Hansen's fault? You know, sometimes I feel like you guys are too hard on the interviewer because you just didn't get the answers that you wanted. You know what I mean? And I feel like that needs to be taken into consideration.
That's fair. And that's why I was telling you that, like, you know, it's
that's fair.
It's point of an interview is to get their view, and I think that, you know, where I faulted you is where, you know, Onision would talk over you and like it's like, dude, come on.
But it's his interview. Like the guy needed. Okay, in my opinion, with Onision, I was like, the guy needed a platform to say what he had to say. And I know you guys all say, well, he uploaded all these videos on his channel, but they got no views.
No,
right?
I agree with that. But then you literally like kind of like you hugged it out with him, just like Chris Hansen hugged it out with Jeffree. I think that's the one point of criticism. But otherwise, I agree. Interviews are meant to see an interview, whether people want to hear it or not.
There are some things that Onision said that I agree with him. Like when everyone was saying that he is a groomer, where is the proof for that? There is no proof. When people are saying that,
let's not get too derailed here. Let's get back on here. Anything else? Well, we have Keemstar's attention here.
Don't derail me. There is no proof of grooming. There is no case where Onision flirted with this girl when she was underage.
We'll get back to that, but I'm saying back to Jeffree Star.
Like back to
no proof.
Okay, but you said you had limited time, Keem. I wanna value your time, homie.
I mean, don't send me in directions. I mean, there is no proof of grooming. Okay. And there's no proof that he broke the law.
Everybody else hear that? No proof. All right, we'll get to that. But
there's one. Can I actually ask a question about that? I was pretty critical of you in a video.
I mean, we interviewed. There was a girl that was in the Onision's house that was right here at Edwin's show, and she literally said to me, "Oh, well, he was mean to her, and he was manipulating her to then be nice to her later." Okay. But you're not inside of Onision's head. That isn't proof. Like there would have to be like Onision being like, "Oh, you're hot," or you know, "I like you," or flirting with her or something when she's underage. There would have to be that to call that grooming.
I want to say something that's. I'm sorry, I keep getting like excited and cutting people off, and I don't mean to. But then the conversation gets brought on to something else, and I don't want to drag it too far back. So when you're done, can I say something really quick?
Oh no, yeah. Is it about the Onision stuff?
No.
Oh, okay. Let me just close out the Onision conversation because I what I meant by derail, I meant like let's try to stick to Jeffree Star. Back to Jeffree Star. Floor is on TehMimi. Go on.
Okay, so this really just got under my skin a lot. One of the biggest things that really infuriated me about this whole interview is that Jeffree and Chris Hansen were talking about Jeffree was talking about like drama channels covering it, and I'm not going to sit here and say that every single drama channel covering things like this isn't doing it for personal gain, but as somebody who is one of the louder channels talking about this right now, I found that to be very irritating because Chris Hansen, okay, I'm going to try to be vague here. There's a situation that was brought to my attention, and it's something that's going on now, something that Davi is involved in, and it's something that's very, very concerning.
Okay.
And I felt that this was extraordinarily serious, so I wanted to reach out to Chris Hansen to inform him because my perception was he always talks about having these legal contacts all the time, and I assumed that maybe he would still have those, considering how much he talks himself up with that reputation. So I finally get in contact with Chris Hansen, and I give him the information, hoping that he would get back to me with some information like, oh, I've contacted authorities. He asked me if I wanted to have a call about it, not like something public that I am under the impression of, just like to one-on-one talk about the information I'd provided. And I said, yeah, and then he never got back to me, and it was about 2 weeks I was waiting, and at this point I was becoming way too, like, it was too long of time at this point. So I figured out, actually Shannon helped me, we figured out how to talk to higher authorities. I'd emailed police departments by this point to no avail, so the next step was to contact the FBI, and it was actually easier than I thought it was to get in touch with them. And I'm just frustrated that the way that they made it sound like is that other channels covering this topic are like insignificant, when I feel like at this point we're doing more work than Chris Hansen is.
I think that it's amazing that you're giving them a voice and someone that's actually respected, okay? No offense or shade to what we call them drama channels, Chris, in the YouTube world, or people that report news. A lot of people do not have great intentions.
It just seems like a slap in the face. Like, we are trying really hard to work on this because we care. Some people obviously do have like personal gain in mind, but I think that those of us who are taking, or that have the balls to start saying these things, there's a lot that I've talked about the past 2 weeks that really could have jeopardized my entire public image. And on top of that, there's been stuff going behind the scenes that is so, to me, serious and concerning. And I trusted somebody to get in contact with authorities. I don't know if he has or not because he hasn't gotten back to me. And it just, personally, if I were in the same position as him right now, the first thing I would do is get back to the person concerned, like, hey, yes, I've contacted the authorities over this. It seems, it's disheartening.
And no offense to Keemstar, but for Jeffree to diss on drama channels and then shortly after be going on Keemstar's channel, where is the logic?
Oh, okay,
no, I'm not a drama channel. I'm literally Dramaler. My show has been around before there was even a drama community or drama channels, so I just don't even consider that.
I wouldn't consider
a drama channel.
What?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider any of us talking right now. Well, no offense, Keemstar, but if anybody was, your name's Drama Alert. But like us, like I feel like there's definitely a difference between people who like talk about these serious topics and people who go around saying, oh, this is tea, sis. Like, there's definitely a level of severity that differs. And it's I guess, like what I said in one of my videos, it's like comparing ostriches to emus. They look very similar, but there's definitely a difference there.
The channels that people call the channels that people call drama channels, they're really commentary channels, but I don't know why they're called drama channels. That's something out of the beauty community, but they really are just commentary channels.
My biggest thing, and I think, like, I don't know if this is going to give me shit, but when I was on stream by myself, I was, like, helping about it. My biggest thing in terms of Chris Hansen, and, like, just Chris Hansen and Jeffree, I guess, saying shit about, like, commentary channels and drama channels and people doing all of that stuff. Chris Hansen doesn't do his own research. Chris Hansen does faulty research. Chris Hansen was only good when he had researchers around him, researchers doing things for him, because he wasn't the person behind the scenes running everything. On YouTube, TehMimi's doing her own research. I'm doing my own research. Are we sharing stuff? Of course. Edwin and, like, Keemstar, I think you actually have researchers, but everyone goes and looks shit up for ourselves. We find things and we break the news. Chris Hansen looks at other people and says, oh, they said this. I just found this out. Someone emailed me, and so I'll say it. And he doesn't fact check. He doesn't do anything. We know we've caught him doing this multiple times. He'll say something that's like, oh, that's not right. He's just an idiot. All right, Chris.
What she just said is so true.
So,
like, Chris Hansen is like, you know, he's letting other people do the work, and then he's jumping on after the fact, which you can say the same thing about me when I interviewed on UCon, but at least I had a different opinion and didn't follow the crowd and make up lies and say that he's going to jail. He's 100% going to jail. He's being invested by the FBI. Like, I didn't say any of this bullshit.
And at least you joined my show afterwards, and you saw the chat shit on you. And will Chris Hansen ever do that?
No. Well, like, that's the thing. My biggest thing is that Chris Hansen wants to shit on drama and commentary channels and all these stuff that are pulling
big
receipts
mistake
for him. He's taking receipts that we have, and he's saying, like, oh, my team found this. And it's like, bitch, your team had Vincent Nicotra, the guy who's doxing people, the guy who's lying about owning your website, the guy who's a scumbag. Your team has a lawyer who's been accused and admitted to sexual assault. So how are you going to say, like, oh, my team is, like, the top in the land? No, they're not, Chris. No, they're not. You're taking things from other people. You're putting people on your channel who take things from other people who don't know what they're freaking talking about. And then you're shitting on us? Okay, Chris, do your own work. Where are you going to be? Nowhere. You f***ing dipshit. You broke-ass bitch. Okay.
Shannon.
I would say something bad about Chris Hansen, but he just wrote me a fat check. Now I just got to wait to see if it clears.
You know it's gonna bounce, dude. Come on.
It's gonna bounce, bitch.
Oh God, he set us all up to do that double roast, dude.
I literally, like, that's my biggest thing, is I have such a problem with Chris, and when Chris came for us in the thing, and he was just like, these channels are spreading around this video, and you say that video doesn't show what it is. And I'm like, okay, you're so stupid, Chris, because if you watch the video and you watch the response, you would know what would have happened. Ashley Kyle, I love you too. But, like, there's so much dumb bullshit that I'm seeing that I'm just like, Chris freaking Hansen needs to shut his mouth before I come and shut it for him. Metaphorically, I'm not going to hurt him. He's like 90, but still, it's like, come on, dude.
Okay, all right.
Edwin, can we talk about grooming? Can we talk about grooming, please? Because I need to hear this.
Okay. Hold on.
How I'm wrong,
Let's have a little order in
Real
the court.
quick, I wanted to say one thing is my opinion with, like, Chris Hansen. So, like, there's been, like, a slope, sort of like a decline. Like, as time went on more and more, I've become more and more disappointed. And the past month and a half has been the most disappointing for me. And while this is, like, definitely like the straw that broke the camel's back, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it was because Chris dissed us that I'm mad now. I've been really disappointed in him for quite a while at this point, and now it's just to a point where I can't not say anything anymore because this is ridiculous.
Like, my biggest thing is that I have given Chris the benefit of the doubt time after time after time. Like, sure, did he employ a guy who doxed people, who said all publicity is good publicity when he was, like, filing copyright strikes, doing all that bullshit? Yeah, he did, but maybe he didn't know. Maybe he just, like, had no idea that the one person everyone was talking about on his team was bad. Then, like, as time went on, it was just, like, it was getting so and so more obvious that Chris Hansen was not operating on, like, a good faith basis. He was literally just, like, saying what he thought people wanted to hear.
Didn't Chris Hansen guarantee Onision was going to be in jail? I thought it was like a guaranteed thing. Like, what happened with that?
Well, you know, it takes time with these things, and with COVID-19 going around. But don't worry, we got that psycho brat and it's just Seattle. Sorry, that's my
not
impression.
only that, but the one piece of evidence that could have been used to put Onision away. The one thing we were told, this is the smoking gun, guys. Don't even worry about it. This thing has so much evidence, it's going to make him poop his little pants. We were told that. And then literally what ended up happening is he was just like, oh yeah, send it over to Vince. Vince will just keep it, admit to f***ing around with it, and then nothing. We're not going to send it to the FBI. We're not going to close this case. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to talk about it. And to me, when the moment I heard they didn't send it off to the FBI, Chris mother Hansen didn't send proof off to the FBI. Something that I've done even before I was on YouTube. I was sitting there and I was like, how the f*** are you going to like come back online without your tail between your legs and say like, I f***ed this up for you guys?
To be fair, I think you guys are all going way too hard on Chris Hansen. I mean the guy literally stopped COVID-19. I mean, give the guy a break.
All right, Keem, I'm so sorry.
See, we have a balance of like
on your mom's basement on Spotify. That's your mom's basement on Spotify.
We have a balance here of personalities. We have like
free on Spotify.
We have chaotic good. We have neutral good. I guess I would be the closest to that. And then we have another sort of chaotic. I don't know what the name is, but I will say that I think that Chris Hansen says too much without giving anything. Like he's constantly saying, "Oh, it's happening," but stop saying it if you can't provide it. You know, it makes you look like a weak authority figure, which you know we all got. Everybody got a raging boner when it's like, "Oh my God, Chris Hansen's on Onision." I mean, let's face it. Chris Hansen before Onision was covering Ice Poseidon and the Only Use Me Blade, which Keem, I believe you know these people. But then as soon as Onision comes, his views spike and he deletes those videos. What's up with that? Now, with this Onision newfound gold mine, he mentions him in every single Davi Vanity stream. But for what? Why does he have to mention Onision if nothing is happening? You're making the Onision story look bad, Chris Hansen, and I know you're watching. Please stop mentioning Onision in these Davi Vanity live streams. We already have one big monster actually fucking kids. Why are you talking about Onision?
Hold on.
Why I didn't know it was gonna pop off. Sorry. Thank you for stopping me.
Why do you guys want to stop talking about Onision, right? Look, all the same YouTubers that were covering the Onision story are now covering the Dama, what's his name, story?
Davi.
Right? Davi. Like you guys have completely switched, right? If it was the beauty community covering this story and Jeffree Star, you know, it just never would happen. And I don't think the beauty community is covering this story on Jeffree Star because Jeffree Star has a lot of pull within those drama channels within the beauty community, right? So I think that's why Jeffree Star, you know, responded to all this because he had to. Like, this is outside of his community. It's the old anti-O and Onision YouTubers that are covering this news story. Final followers.
So okay, so I think you misunderstood because what I'm saying is Chris is providing non-updates. All he is saying is that the FBI is still looking into him. He's not saying anything new. I'm not saying don't cover Onision. And, you know, I am planning on covering it, but like at this point, it's reached a stale point. Like, what else can you say? There's literally no updates. It's reached the point where if you continue to cover them, it's gonna look like a joke, which is what it. You know, there's valid videos by Nicholas Diorio in the chat. Huh?
Okay,
are you admitting that the Onision thing looks like a joke now?
It's beginning to look like a joke because people are squeezing it out when there's nothing there. Like everything's out already. And it gets to a point where
you heard it right here from Edwin. There's nothing there. Thank
you. I'm saying
there's one thing I want to say.
To make a bigger point out of what Edwin's saying is that there's some channels like Edwin. I would like to say like myself, but like people can think otherwise. Who have talked about the Onision situation? Who have talked about like the J Station situation? Who have talked about different things like this? Who will say things like, we'll make videos when a video is necessary. Like if something comes out about Onision that's like groundbreaking, or like it changes the game, we're gonna sit there and be like, hey guys, XYZ happened, here's the update. There are some people, I'm not naming names, I want to, but they make videos on Onision every day. They're like, Onision posted this on Twitter, so crazy.
Yeah, remember when Repsion made a 5-part series about Onision chopping down trees? I remember that. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of channels were built and revived on making Onision videos, and one of those is Chris Hansen, right? So, of course, they're going to continue to talk about it. But, I mean, why am I sitting here saying there's no evidence of grooming? Because, one, I haven't seen it. I have yet to see it. I mean, everyone just hates on me and says I'm wrong and how could you? Like, there's no
define
purpose
grooming
for me to come out
what is
and
grooming
defend Onision in any shape or form, because all it results in is people giving me hate. And there is, in fact, an incentive to say Onision's guilty and Onision is being invested by the FBI and Onision's going to go to jail and make these angry anti-Onision videos because there is support. Look at everyone in this goddamn chat. He's 100% guilty. You know, I'm sorry, but this anti-O community needs a reality check. I think, you know, between me and the Onision interview and some other commentators that made videos towards the end, giving this community a reality check, I think that's done and over. And like Edwin said, there's nothing there.
Blue Skidoo, someone probably has dirt on Jeffree. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't think that's true. I think everyone's just trying to look for a reason why it's okay that he did what he did. So there's scapegoating and being like, well, someone's holding it against him. When if Jeffree comes online and says there were no contracts, which he said in the Hansen interview, nobody has any dirt on me, which he said in the Hansen interview.
So I think that I don't think it's about having dirt. I think he just doesn't care enough. Or doesn't know how to handle it, so he's just playing it really politically safe, right? I feel like that's as politically safe as he could have done it. But definitely I guarantee people have plenty of dirt on Jeffree, but he's a very intimidating person. In fact, I've been getting messages from 7 supposedly reputable adults and stuff, and I'll look into it, but like, there's people definitely with dirt on Jeffree. You know, he used to be a pretty bad person, as we can see from you know, bragging about having sex with someone who's blackout drunk and literally puking on the toilet. And humiliating them, pulling their pants down and making them fall down the stairs. That's some weird, wicked shit. Like, that's not some shit that everybody does 10 years ago. You can't just say, oh, it was 10 years ago. Like, I never did that 10 years ago. Did anybody in the chat, like, film someone puking and brag about how they just had sex with them right before that? Is that a normal thing? Like, am I missing something here?
Jeffree, yeah. My biggest thing is that Jeffree, when he was doing that, is like the age I am now, or the age I was like 3 years ago.
Right.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? I am an adult woman who pays bills, pays her taxes, has an apartment, like does all this stuff. I'm sitting there, it's like, would I ever do this? And the answer is no. That's fucking weird and that's fucking gross. And everyone has their own story, but I'm sitting here like, I don't know adult in my life, in like life around myself, who would do that. So that's not normal. It's like, what the f are you doing?
And you know, a lot of people in the chat actually haven't seen this video, so I'm actually gonna play it, but I'll try to skip around the vomiting part because that's pretty disgusting. It's very and a lot of people can be triggered by that. And
also, they're gonna come at you and say, whoa, we saw this video on YouTube from, you know, 8, 9, 10 years ago where you know, there's Jeffree Star in a bathroom saying that he had something going on with this fellow the night before, and he's sick to his stomach from drinking, and they're gonna make you look like a predator here.
Oh, of course, and they always have.
What do you say about that, though? Because, you know, look, it's not a flattering video.
I have no makeup on, and I still look goddamn better than them. Don't hate, bitch, because you nasty, and I'm gonna fuck your boyfriend. Okay, bitch. Thank you.
So usually after we sleep with people, we want them out of our house, and this guy passed out in my bathroom, and he won't wake up, and I'm gonna kill myself.
So we're gonna get him the out of here.
Did you love fucking me? You did, huh? Yeah, please. Hi. Wake up. You thought Chris Brown was bad. Come on. Wake up.
You thought Chris Brown was bad. Come on, wake up.
Please, praise God.
Okay, hold on. He's about to puke, so let me just
There's a lot of puke in that video.
Yeah.
Oh, she was puking on my face.
Yes, bitch. This shit fucking wetter than the Little Mermaid's pussy. Don't drink. Please.
And fuck.
Yeah. And what?
Don't drink and fuck.
Amen.
I want to remind you guys, in the Chris Hansen interview, he brushed it off like, oh, it was just some guy we picked off the bar, and then the next day he told me to take it down, so I did. You know, it's not a big deal. Okay, let's keep watching. That's his bare ass, or is it? Oh, that is. Yeah, they were just pointing.
Grab his hand.
Oh my goodness.
Crawl like
diva.
crawl like my dog. Okay, down the stairs. Pull your pants up. Please. Don't choke on your vomit. I don't want you to die. I'm gonna kill you first.
Okay, so now let's remember the context here. Jeffree Star said in the Chris Hansen interview, people never ask the context, right? What happened before and what happened after. So according to Jeffree Star, his context of what happened after and what happened before was he picked him up from a bar, and then afterwards he took down the video. So it's no problem. I don't know. I'm confused. Let me. Anybody else can chime in on this, because I'm confused.
Yeah, well, I've had a situation where I told my friend that this is what you look like and I've had to nurse you like a baby, but at the same time I kind of feel like this situation was exploitative.
Right.
And that was my issue with the whole entire thing. Not necessarily like him filming somebody, it's just him filming them in an exploitative way. And I worry about the fact that he would have gone home in this cab and choked on his own vomit in his bed and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like even though he doesn't know this person or whatever, he still had somewhat of a duty of care, and I just wish that he'd done something. But at the same time, you know, has everyone not filmed the friend drunk before?
Right. But did you see the interview with Chris Hansen when he addressed this?
Yeah, he just kind of glazed over it. But that, I mean, to be honest, what did we expect? He glazed over a lot of issues. There was a lot of non-answers. There was a lot of book passing. Do you get what I mean? So
Of course it looks probably crazy, but that's a drunk person throwing up in a toilet. What happened after? What happened before? No one ever wants to ask any questions. They just want to copy and paste and write their own narrative. That video was on MySpace and had millions of views. Later, that dude asked me to delete it and said, hey, I'm trying to do a serious job in government, and he lived in San Diego. Please delete that video. So I deleted it.
Well, I guess the issue that I had is because he said that this is a guy that he picked off of a bar, and then the next day the guy said, can you take that off because I have a government job. And, you know, Jeffree Star was big on MySpace, so obviously it like concerned the man. So I think there's a difference between filming a friend and humiliating them on a sort of private level, even if you did it on social media, than like blasting it through your whole MySpace from a guy that you just met off a bar.
I think he just kind of went along with the narrative that it was just this time of outrage culture. And whilst I understand that it was outrage culture at that time, it's just like, it's difficult because in my head, I'm like, I remember that time. I was a scene kid in that time. I was playing Jeffree Star's music in that time. I remember that time very well, and outrage culture was definitely in. But at the same time, to just kind of dust it under the rug as that and not actually address it, it just honestly, like, we all do stuff in the past. Like, this is the part. Like, I'm not a complete horrible human being. We all do stuff in the past. We've all said things that are awful. We've all made mistakes. But then we have to kind of somewhat hold ourselves accountable when the time comes. Do you get what I mean? If you said something bullshitty in the past, then just say, you know, I said something bullshitty in the past. My issue with this whole entire situation will be, and always will be, that this was never going to be a positive outcome for Jeffree Star, and I knew that from the jump, because it's either lied about the statutory rape of a minor or told the truth about the statutory rape of a minor and did absolutely nothing about it. There's several things I can make excuses for, but that is the one thing that I just simply cannot make an excuse for. And there was no out for me. And I was, even in the back of my head, I was somewhat hoping that in this interview with Chris Hansen that there was going to be an out. That he was going to tell me something that would make me think, do you know what? I look like a damn fool now. And he didn't prove me wrong. He pointed the finger. He passed the buck. And it was just sad to see. And it was sad to see Chris Hansen get so friggin' starstruck. Like, who the hell is Jeffree Star in the grand scheme of life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just so sad to see him so starstruck. Ask questions like, who is Jeffree today? Who gives up? You can see his YouTube channel. We know who Jeffree is today, goddamn. Why are you asking such ridiculous, pandering questions?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, what Chris was trying to do, and I brought this up earlier, it's like anytime things got really hard in the interview, he would be like, also, you give a lot of money away. Let's talk about that because we just talked about you.
Oh, yes. Stop.
First of all, I'm still waiting to figure out what people lied about because there was still no confirmation that, you know, what tweets were photoshopped, what's the lie here.
Right.
But secondly is the fact that again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really disappointed with not how easy this interview was, but there were a lot of questions that could have been asked, and I feel as though they were avoided. And I don't know if this was influenced in any way. I don't want to say that because I don't know. But it definitely feels as though it points he was pandering. And I know Keem earlier was saying that, you know, we become upset because we don't get the answers
we want
that are what we want. But I think there's a little more to do with the idea that I think they had a conversation before the interview began. They had a conversation last week. We don't know what was said in those conversations.
I can find out.
Were these picked questions or were okay,
sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
I knew that this conversation was going to be an absolute bullshit conversation from the moment. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I'm gonna.
Can you say bull poop?
Okay, bull poop conversation.
Okay.
Purely
you
because
can say bullshit afterward. I would just want to hear you say bull poop. Sorry.
But I knew it was going to be a shitty conversation purely by how he described the interview. It's like, coming up on Take a Seat with Chris Hansen, we have Jeffree Star, the YouTube juggernaut. And I'm like,
I had a long conversation with Jeffree today, and he's going to join me exclusively live on a special edition of Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. We've got an exclusive interview with Jeffree Star on Sunday.
I can't stand Chris Hansen. I'm just going to I cannot stand him. I think
every
he is like the worst.
Has had a roast. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw up your roast. Keep going.
I just think he's like the worst person to deal with this kind of stuff ever because everything is so self-serving. And I mean, sorry to completely derail, but I don't know if anybody's aware of this or if anybody knows about this. There is the Pablo Escobar phone situation. I don't know if anyone has been talking about that. But like, just the fact that he was even able to promote a product that he's never used, never touched, never handled, doesn't even know about. And I was just like, so it's about money then? Do you get what I mean? I would never. I know a lot of YouTubers and influencers who would never actively promote a product that they've never seen work, they've never seen action, they've never read reviews, just say it because they were paid to. And I was like, that shows your level of integrity, sir. And because of that, I'm now not going to listen to a single word of what you say.
That's an easy $50.
And this interview has solidified for me that he is entirely incompetent. And when it comes down to creating a story to fit a celebrity narrative, that he will do so. I wouldn't want him to interview real ass, badass individuals like R. Kelly, like Weinstein. Do you get what I mean? I wouldn't want him to interview people like that. You get what I mean? Because given the opportunity, would he be starstruck with real predators? Like, do you get what I mean? And I know that Jeffree Star is not a predator. I know that he is not the focus of this situation, but what he has done is harm the investigation severely, because now people are going to sit there and go, is Damien lying? Oh, well, if he was able to lie about this, was he lying about that whole situation with James Charles last year? Exactly. You know what I mean? And it invalidates so much, and it's so harmful, and he didn't address that. But he didn't address that because simply the questions weren't asked.
Right.